Leah here from MagicByLeah.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how I make my funky geometric earrings and pendant sets. For this technique, you'll need a sheet of patterned polymer clay. I'm using MagicbyLeah, but you can also use cane work or other techniques that give you pretty colors. I have a few already here, and I'll show you how I create that design from the initial MagicbyLeah. You'll also need pliers, some jump rings. This is craft wire formed into a loop for the back of the pendant. We'll need a flexible cutting blade and a rolling pin. To create the pattern sheet, I start with a small piece of MagicbyLeah, which I showed you how to make in my last few videos, and I put it onto a thin sheet of scrap clay rolled out at the number 5 setting. I roll them both together through the number 5 setting on the pasta machine so that the pattern stretches out and slowly starts to grow onto the scraps. Here you can see the design stretched a little because I thinned down the sheet. But if I want to stretch it even more, I'll take another thin sheet of scrap and paste it on there, and then run it through the pasta machine again until it's back to a number 5 setting. And here you can see the piece is much bigger. The colors have moved around and stretched very nicely. I'm going to run this through one more time to maximize the effect. And here we have it. Look how big it is, and look how varied and beautiful that pattern is. So now we want to turn this into a pendant. So look for a pretty area on the sheet that you want to capture, and then start cutting around it. I like this little star-like shape, so I'm going to go after that right there. And I also like the pretty pattern up here. Let's see if we can get that into one piece. So the key here is not to cut it straight, because that's boring. So you want to bend your blade this way to get a curved end, or this way to get like a inverted curve. Once I have my first cut, I just look and see what else I want to capture. And I want to go after this design here, but I'm going to invert the blade like this. Alright, so we're nearly there, and now the question is how big you want this piece, because that's going to be the bottom of the pendant. So let's go for something like this. Now this is a style that I really like, but you can always play around with it once you get the final piece and just fix it up. I'm going to make it a little narrower. So this is the piece I want to use, and now we want to create the back so that it's not so thin and flimsy, otherwise it'll break. To create the back, roll out a sheet of clay at a thicker setting. I went with the number 2 on the pasta machine, and make sure that your piece fits and that there's clay sticking out on every side. I'm going for an effect that is not the same size, but instead sticks out in every direction. Now here's the fun part. You want to take your blade and curve it so it matches the shape of what you already have, but don't go and cut exactly where it is. Move it slightly off so that you get a border on the outer layer. Look at that, you see how it sticks out a little? And we do the same thing for each side. So here you have the finished piece with a nice border of clay around it. For the pendant, I created this hook out of craft wire, but you can use anything that you normally use for your pendants. And I flip the piece upside down. I set it up so that there's a hook, and that hook I'm going to sort of drag and embed into the clay. Be careful not to push it too far, or you'll push it right through to the front and wreck your design. And then I cut a small piece of clay that I'm going to use to secure that into place. You don't want it to be too thin so that it breaks, but not too thick so that it becomes uncomfortable for the wearer. Put that on there, and then use a rolling pin to softly secure it into place. You want to make sure that the clay gets in between the wire so that it doesn't slip out. You can also use your hands. And here we go. Another good thing about this is that I'm going to bake it face down, and that means the design is less likely to get burnt. And once it's baked, you always have the option of buffing it or sanding it if you want. So that's the first one. Let's look at a couple more patterns. So here I have a piece of MagicbyLeah, which I actually showed you how to create in a previous video, and I just love the transition between the blues and the whites. So I want to capture that for my pendant. I like the bottom here, so I'm going to cut it slightly rounded. And that's where the design starts. I'm going to give it this inverted cut right here. Again, I'm just following the prettiness of the piece, and if I see something that should go, that's where I determine where to make my cuts. And here I'm going to do a round cut there to get rid of those boring side pieces. And then for fun, I'm going to cut the top at an angle like this. And here we have the piece. Now let's do the back. I'm actually going to make it a little thinner. I think it'll look nicer that way. So I'm just going to snip a bit off right here. I have some navy blue clay rolled out. Paste it on there, make sure it sticks out. And then cut around with a border. Here we go. I'll put the backs on later because I want to show you a few more. And here's another beautiful sheet of mokumegane from my initial mokumegane earrings and pendant video. And I actually want to turn these into earrings, specifically pulling out these circles because they're so pretty. Because the earrings have to be the same size, you can't really guess at it. So I created a shape like this that I'm going to use as a template and simply flip it over for the second earring. With earrings like this on a tricky pattern, you do have to be careful. So let's hope this works. I'm going to put the pattern right there for the first one, capturing the circle on the bottom. And cut it pretty close. And because the circles are close to each other, I do have to be careful not to wreck the entire sheet. But I'm just going to finish cutting it here and the bottom. And here we go. There's the first one. Now one thing I messed up a few times was I forgot to flip the template, so I make sure I flip it to get a pair rather than two of the same one. And here we go. I captured the second circle for the second piece. If it moves, just reposition it before you make the other cuts. So here we have the two earring pieces. Now for the backs of the earrings, it's a little bit tricky because we have to make sure to get a jump ring in there so that we can actually hook it up to an earring wire. Here's how I do it. I take the template and find about where I want the end to be and indent it so that I know where to cut, and I start by cutting that edge. Then I take the jump ring and I put it onto the edge and press it into place. That way we'll have where to attach the earring wire. I center the top of the earring over the wire so that we have the first piece, and then cut it the same way. Notice that the cut isn't exact, so I could just cut off the excess because I got a little thick on the other side. So here we have one. Now we'll do the same thing for the second one. Uh-oh. Notice that it sticks out. That means I have to move the jump ring. Much better. And here we have an earring set. Now here we have a beautiful sheet of mokumegane, so let's see what we can do with it. We'll try an interesting style pendant because I like that heart there. Here we go. Hey, that's a beautiful piece of scrap, so why don't we turn that into a pendant too? Let's see if there's enough room here. And there is. Not bad for a piece of scrap. And last but not least, we have this beautiful sheet of lavender and pearl. So I want to see if I can get a pendant and an earring set out of this. I'll start with the earring set because I want them to match, so I need to be able to find similar patterns on the sheet. I like this right here where the colors kind of have bubbles. And then we have some more bubbles here, so that will make two similar looking earrings. They'll never be exactly the same with mokumegane, but you do want to try to keep it similar enough. I have another template that I created using the same style and pre-baked it so that it won't stick to the clay. There's one. And remember to flip it so that you have a pair. If it moves, move it back, or one will be fatter than the other one. So here are the earrings. And now for the pendant, we want something similar so that it fits the set. So I want to pull that general area. Because it helps if I use the sharp end rather than the non-blade side. Notice I got all ripped up. And here we go, the last set. Now I just have to add the backs to the pendants, bake it, buff it, and we're good to go. If you like any of the pieces that I did here, they're available for sale on my website, which you can find at MagicByLeah.com/shop. For a detailed list of supplies used in this project, along with answers to your specific questions, visit my website, MagicByLeah.com, or click the link in the description. I will be uploading new videos regularly, so be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. But for even more bonus tutorials, tips, and so much more, join my email newsletter by clicking the link in the description or visiting my website, MagicByLeah.com.